Our guest for this hour is here. Odhiambo Ramogi is an economist and the CEO of Elim Capital. And he's our guest this hour. And we're going to be looking at the cost of protests versus the cost of corruption. Which one weighs on the scale more than the other? And which one should we knock off the scale and say, you know what? It is actually this corruption that we ought to be looking at. Or we need to be worried about the cost of protests, or do they balance out? So we'll be having that conversation this morning. I should say good morning to you.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very fine, thank you.
It has been a minute.
It has, just a little cold, forgive me. My voice is all over the place. So be gentle on me this morning.
Don't even worry about it. You're in good company. So today is the day when the voices are voicing. So you know what? We'll do what we can.
All right, thank you.
Don't worry about it. Karibu sana. But let's welcome you with today's proverb, right?
Mm-hmm. Our proverbs for the whole of this week come from the sovereign island nation and the Union of Comoros. Okay? The Union has 4 different islands. Okay? Now, this is what I always find. This one tickles me to death. That it's an island nation in the middle of the Indian Ocean, but it's in East Africa. Okay, so it means there's an East African Indian Ocean, doesn't it?
It's an East African Indian Ocean. Yes, okay, let's go with that.
Indian Ocean. Yes, that. Anyway, the proverb: a beggar will not mind being insulted. A beggar who cannot take insults will go hungry.
Huh.
What do you think, Ramogi?
A beggar will not mind being insulted. It has a similitude to the beggar's knees are supple. So that if you lack capacity and that capacity is in someone else's hands and you need to get it desperately so to the point of begging, some small insults will be overlooked to achieve the greater goal.
Take the insult today to get what you want tomorrow.
In fact, don't even consider it an insult. An insult is an insult when you accept it as an insult. Yes.
Could be water off a duck's back. Doesn't matter because I'm going to get what I need anyway. So you can insult me until the day comes.
Wouldn't you agree?
I think I would.
My friend, where I come from, pride is very important. There are things, of course, that we find very difficult to swallow, even if the end goal is still beautiful.
And you are aware that... No, we're having a little moment here.
Oh, you guys clearly...
Yes,
so, you are in good company.
Yes, and you're aware that pride comes before fall, don't you?
Well, we'll handle the fall when it comes. In the meantime, however, Buana, don't insult us.
Don't beg. Buana, we don't beg.
There's a common phrase in the Luo, Jaluo Ksechi.
What does that mean?
It means a Luo doesn't beg.
You know, we could have a whole conversation about this, but time is not on our side. I will not allow 2 of you to get into this thing this morning.
I think that's a very interesting proverb for further reflection in the day. Yeah. I have also not said this. I observed that you guys won the award, the Super Brands Award. Let me say congratulations.
Why, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. You're a very observant person. Thank you.
Yeah. I actually saw it on Monday, and that's how I started engaging with Eric and Ednah, and I just passed my congratulations. And now I'm here in person. Let me mention, it's good to be in an award-winning radio station.
Thank you very much. And you know, we can't go without saying that the folks that come in here every day and the audiences that tune in across platforms are essentially the ones that help us to be able to do this on this station every day, every hour. So thank you also for recognizing and for being here.
Right.
So many things have been happening in the country over the last 1 month. We're looking at, at that precipice on the 25th of June and then getting to this point where we are today. And many things have been called for. And it's interesting because just in the last hour, we, having a conversation about how these protests have cost the nation a lot of money. The protests in terms of loss of property have been high. In terms of loss, what would come in concerning the economy have been even higher. Put that on the scale. And on the other side of the scale, let's put the cost of corruption. and say the money that is lost every day by whomever it may be, at whatever level, do the two equate?
That's a very good question, and I'll request that you allow me a few minutes just to give my analysis, and then after that, we'll probably debate it further.
Sure.
A few weeks back, the government spokesman, Mr. Kuria, a certain Mr. Kuria, came up saying that we are losing about 6 billion shillings. We've lost about 6 billion shillings from the protests. Now, let me start by saying, in all honesty, yes, protests are costly because it means people do not get to town as often as they should. It means traveling is curtailed. It means that restaurants and eateries in towns are under patroned. It means that those of us who would probably want to go shopping in town will want to lock ourselves indoors and watch TV, at least those of us who are not courageous enough to step out. And so they are costly. But it also needs to be remembered that it is very difficult to quantify those losses. And the reason why it is difficult to quantify the exact loss is because now in a protest, first of all, you need to understand, okay, the region where the protest is happening generates this amount of income per day. And anybody who's done research in this country knows that it is very difficult to get that data, especially at the county level. So how much money is generated from Nairobi CBD per day? It's hard to establish. What we have, however, is that the GDP of Nairobi County is about 5.2 trillion. Now, 5.2 trillion on a daily rate would come down to around 14 billion, assuming that money is being generated on every day, including Saturday and Sunday.
Right.
Now, but we do not know whether this 14 billion is from JKIA, Westlands, Upper Hill, CBD, Kilimani, Karen, Runda, UN Gigiri. It's not clear what comes from where. And so now when you say, for example, that we have lost 6 billion from Nairobi city, where are you getting this data from? Because it's not in the public domain. So generally, it's very hard to measure that. The other reason why it's hard to measure that is that in the midst of any crisis, there are gainers and then there are losers. There are Matatu people who just enjoyed that day because, well, at least there is a large population that will be
ferried back to
yes.
wherever they're coming from,
There's a population of guys who are selling water who also had a field day because they were selling water to the protesters. There are those who are selling flags, T-shirts, patriotic T-shirts. I saw a T-shirt on Anguka Nayo. Someone somewhere enterprising just developed that. And so then how do we again quantify the industries that actually gained out of it? So in essence, what I'm trying to say is that what Mweshimiwa was saying is stories ajaba. It's difficult to measure. It's economic fiction that is institutionalized, to say the least.
Okay.
Now, but we understand each other that there is usually a little loss. I doubt it's 6 billion though. Let me perhaps, before going into the debate, go into the other side of the conversation, which is the cost of corruption. Now, this one is also hard to measure. And the reason why it's hard to measure is because corruption is secretive. But ours has been institutionalized. Publicized. And people are very proud of it. To the extent that a former head of state actually said that we lose about 2 billion shillings per day to corruption. If you were to do this in an annual basis, 365 times 2 billion, I think it was around 2.5, it comes to around 790 thereabouts per day, per year on corruption. This is a third of all revenue generated in 2023. That is a third of all revenue generated, all national revenue generated in the Republic of Kenya in 2023. Now, what that means, let me perhaps paint a picture to it. If you add what we earn from corporate tax, which is around 250 billion, to what we earn from pay as you earn, which is around 500 billion, that's what you get. So what we lose in corruption is a totality of all the corporate tax and all the payee. That's all income taxes combined together. In fact, it is also equivalent to all the custom duty that comes into the country, which is around 790 billion. And so then that now paints you a picture of just how big the corruption loss is. Now, what does this mean in actual numbers? I'll do the quantities, I'll do the qualitative losses, and then I'll finish with the fiscal taxes and leave it at that. The tax implications and leave it at that. In terms of quantity, this means around 6,000 potential hospitals could be built. Professor Kivutha Kibwana told us that you can actually build a hospital with 100 million and equip it. If we were to go by the Professor Kibwana's approach, which he did in Makueni, and prove that it is possible, that would be about 6,000 hospitals that are being lost to corruption every year. That's about 20 hospitals per constituency. So that's how bad it is. If we were to look at it in terms of the payment to doctors, at around 500,000 per doctor in Kenya, there are 10,000 registered doctors in Kenya. At around 500,000 per month payment to every doctor in Kenya, that would pay all the doctors in Kenya for around 14 years without any strike happening, without any complaint, without any issue.
We just rewind that a bit. This amount we are speaking of,
yes,
we started off with the assertion that 2 billion is lost every day.
Yes.
And we've computed it to amount to 700, it's 365 days times 2, okay?
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. Now, having done that, we are now trying to put it into quantifiable, given the quantifiable scenario.
Yes.
And this is where we come with the salaries.
Correct.
Okay, repeat that one again.
Yeah.
So if we paid every doctor,
this amount would pay every registered doctor, because there are 9,000 registered doctors, 9,000 plus change.
so let's round it off to 10.
Round it off to 10. So 10,000 doctors being paid 500,000 per month. Now, if you pay them 500,000 per month, in a year, that's around 6 million per doctor. 6 million per doctor times 10,000 gives you 60 billion. Now, 60 billion would pay these doctors for the next 14 years.
From the money that is lost
on corruption. For the next 14 years, without any strike happening. 14 years of peace, no strike.
Oh, sorry. Sometimes it's good that we just do this
They're asking 200,000.
Line by line.
Yes.
We're saying 10,000. Where do we get this 10,000 number, doctor?
It is in public domain.
Okay, fine.
The number of registered doctors.
Number of registered doctors in Kenya, 10,000 doctors.
Check that, 10,000.
700 and something billion shillings projected is the amount of money that's lost to corruption in Kenya every year. It's a third of the money that is collected in terms of revenue.
Correct.
Because we're looking at 2.1 trillion shillings around there is what KRA collects.
Yes.
However it is spent is a totally different story. So 700 billion shillings.
And this is money earned. This is not money loaned or granted.
No. This is money from inside domestic collection, revenue.
Yes.
Right? 10,000 doctors could be paid 500,000 shillings a month.
They're asking for 200,000, but they could be paid 500,000
for 14 years.
For 14 years.
From the money lost from corruption.
From the money lost from corruption.
The money that is lost for corruption in 1 year.
In 1 year.
Could pay these doctors for 14 years at 500,000 shillings a pop.
Double and a half the money that they're asking for today.
Yes. Can I carry on?
Yes.
The money that is lost to corruption would pay JSS teachers for the next 80 years.
Okay, when I first came to Kenya, maybe 8 or 80.
80.
80.
Because you see, what they're saying is that the budget that was meant to pay JSS was 10 billion, right?
Yes.
So the data on JSS is still scanty. But they had said that 10 billion shillings that was supposed to come from the taxes they had introduced in the Finance Bill 2024 was supposed to pay JSS teachers. If then we go by that 10 billion figure, the money lost on corruption would pay these JSS teachers all of them annually for the next 8 years. And this is money lost in 1 year. For the next 80 years. The children they are teaching now, who are around 12, 13 years old, by the time that money is depleted, will be 93 years old. Assuming they live that long. All right? The money, let me go to roads. Now, before I go to roads, I think let's first of all educate university students.
Oh, yes, please, let's do. Because right now we have a problem.
Yes, we have a problem. So the money that we lose to corruption could educate all university students registered, around 600,000 of them. It's around 556, but let's round it off to 600,000.
Why not? Okay.
Yeah. At the cost of 200,000 per student, that money could educate all the university students in the Republic of Kenya, all, private, public, all, for the next 8 years. In other words, we could educate 4 years, waende, and then educate another 4 years. And this is money lost in 1 year. All of them, we could educate them for the next 8 years.
How many?
All 600,000 university students in the Republic of Kenya.
Yes.
Remind me how much university fees are per year.
Around 200,000. I'm calculating with around 200,000.
This is what we're talking about now per year. So by the time you finish, assuming that a university degree is 4 years, you'll be done. Maybe you're spending 800,000 shillings.
Yes.
Okay.
So assuming university is 4 years,
Yeah.
we will have educated 2 batches of university students
With the money.
without any parent going into the pocket.
Without help.
Without help.
Whatever.
Nothing.
Okay.
Yes. And this is money lost to corruption in 1 year. And then let's now go to TVET, because maybe not all of them go to the university. TVET has around 400,000. To educate TVET, we need around 100,000 per student. Now, there are those which are more. For example, KMTC might be more. And then there are those which are significantly
Less,
low.
yes.
Like plumbing would be a lot lower. But in average, let's average 100,000. That translates to about 40 billion per year for TVET. And so then we would educate all the TVET students for the next 20 years with the money lost to corruption in 1 year. And now let me go to roads. If we were to assume that we are tarmacking roads at 50 million per kilometer, this is usually difficult because they say that there are roads that are more expensive can go into 300 million per kilometer, like the ones in Dongo Kundu, where there's a lot of work that needs to be done across the ocean. But there are the others which are not that expensive that can come down to what Mutua did, which is around 20 million per kilometer.
Yeah.
But let me use 50 million per kilometer on average.
Okay.
If we did 50 million per kilometer, we would do in 1 year 16,000 kilometers of tarmac roads.
What? They would even finish Enterprise Road.
You are saying Enterprise Road. all the roads that are tarmacked in the Republic of Kenya today, since independence, is 12,000
What?
kilometers. So what we would do with the money lost to corruption in 1 year is 125% of all the roads that are tarmacked in the Republic of Kenya. So that now tells you why then we feel that the amount lost to corruption is a lot more than the amount lost to the protests.
And that's what should be paid attention to.
And that's what should be paid attention. Let me finish. I had said that I'll finish with the tax part.
Yes.
Why this is very important and why this connects to the protests. Because the protests emanated from a finance bill which was all but, very sensitive. You see, when you have done a lot of corruption, if, for example, a third of all your revenue, tax revenue, does not go into servicing the needs of the republic, does not go into servicing the provisions of the law, then you have to be creative to get extra resources,
Of course,
to now meet the needs of the people, because you have prioritized corrupt gains over providing services. And so because then now you need money to provide services, you need money to provide education, you need money to build roads. So you have to go back to the people and say, you know what? The taxes you gave us are not enough.
Yes.
And so we need to increase the taxes so that then we can build an extra SGR. We need to get more taxes, then we can build more roads. But essentially, what you have is more than enough.
Yes.
But you don't find it is more than enough, so you have to go back to the people and make some unsustainable, unsuitable policy decisions of just overtaxing Kenyans. And so that is how now corruption is connected to the protests. The protests are about corruption and misgovernment and poor governance that has led us to a point where we are overcharging Kenyans in terms of taxation, and we are not providing the services because a third of all that they give the government to work with go into private pockets, buy expensive watches, take clandes to Paris and Dubai shopping. So now we are left with nothing to provide services for the people of Kenya.
There have been tales of, money lost through protests, but we see that even before that, there's huge amounts of money that's lost that could potentially do, earth-moving things for the country. Qualify that, Ramogi.
Well, thank you. There is also the qualitative losses from corruption that we have observed. A few days back, I think I saw an interview where Larry Madowo was talking to a young man and asking him why he was in the streets. And the young man says, my wife thinks I'm a loser because I can no longer get employment, and therefore I cannot be the man I should be to the family. What this means is that there are lost services to the public, and that is a fact. You see that in an environment of corruption, the first things that lost when finance bill came and the appropriations bill 2024 was sanitary pads. Linda Mama, the things that really matter to mwananchi wa kawaida are the first things that lost. But there is also the part that we lose. You see, with high corruption, what leads is high taxes. And high taxes mean you and I no longer have savings. And no savings mean no investment. And no investment mean no employment. And so if there is no employment, then more and more Kenyans will be unhappy. Then you have crime rates increasing. Then you have you find yourself in a cyclical problem. But the other problem also is that increased taxes mean that investment coming from outside is no longer flowing in as was expected.
Right.
So then this part of no employment carries on and continues, because if you have zero or less than expected foreign direct investment, then you have no employment to create. You have no capacity to create employment. And because of that, of course, you have the other problems that accompany it. And finally, let me say that there are lost ambitions by young people who would have been educated, whether in the university or in TVET institutions. Right now, that whole education policy is in a mess because, look, I consider myself to be a very smart gentleman.
Okay.
And I still don't understand that thing. And I've done a lot of research in the education sector. How they determine, for example, okay, this one we are going to support and make sure he goes to university, chaukweli. Yeah. But this one, them they are okay. They should pay the whole 300, 200,000. It's not clear to someone like me. Now, Sembuse, someone in, say, Garissa, who is trying to access these resources, it becomes very, very difficult for this person to access that opportunity. And so those are the qualitative losses that we have observed, that it is very difficult to quantify and tell someone there are this number of young people who could have developed a great business for this country who are now not in the university, or there are this number of people who would have come up with a great invention who are now not at the university, or this number of people died because of the doctors' strike, and you could have paid doctors, but you opted to buy expensive watches. So it is very difficult.
You're not going to let go of this watch.
No. Not at all. Yeah.
How then? Because oftentimes, and I think we are justified to do so, that it doesn't become clear in the minds of people what you're actually talking about when you talk about losses. And to do that, then you actually see what you would gain in the presence of a loss. So when you do that, then you see, okay, actually this is what it means.
Right.
And so for the insistence on certain things to happen then becomes greater. But then how would it translate? How would it translate, Ramogi? When we're saying this money that is lost, how do you now say find that money and apply it here? I mean, I know exactly why I'm asking you that question, but what are then those taps that need to be closed? What needs to happen to ensure that you can actually hire doctors for 14 years or 10 years, so that you can make sure that JSS teachers are at work and teaching, or that you can make sure that the capitation that's supposed to go to schools actually goes, that you can build hospitals and make sure that people don't have to travel so far to seek healthcare. What are those taps that need to then be closed to ensure that this money is not lost? And is it not at the front and center of what the protests were about?
It is. And let me first of all say that I congratulate the organizers of the protests, the tribeless, leaderless group. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. Now, we need to go beyond that into the whole corruption question is a governance question. And I know I've done some good work on breaking the figures, but it is not a mathematical, it is not an accounting question, it is a political governance question. And I am glad that young people are now taking a keen interest into the political situation in the country and asking the difficult questions. But they need to present themselves, and beyond presenting themselves, take leadership positions. If they fail to step up in 2027, they will be led by people who are out to corruptly gain from them. They will be led by people who are supporting the others who are corruptly gaining. And that will be a problem. The bigger issue also is you find that this group has not voted traditionally, because they say, "Ata tukivote, it doesn't make a difference." To some extent, they are true, but if they can organize themselves to protest and bring down the kind of heat they have brought down, I think they can organize themselves to govern. And if they can organize themselves to govern, then one of the things that they need to do is don't change the monkeys in the forest and you leave the forest intact. Because what will happen is the institutions of corruption. Corruption is no longer, in this administration, corruption is no longer a scandal. You see, in the days of Kibaki, it was a scandal. Anglo leasing scandal. Goldenberg was before, I think.
Yeah.
So we were used to scandals because it was one-off, once in a while. In this administration, it is institutionalized, it is regularized, it is accounted for and budgeted for, to the extent that when there is a small scandal, people wonder, but it's only 7 billion. I remember there was a time Aurora and Kimarer came up and we were wondering, where is that money? And someone confidently asked us, it is only 7 billion, because he knows what goes to private pockets is actually 800 billion. And so it is institutionalized. And I think we need to remove those institutions, and we need to come up with governance, stronger governance practices.
But Ramogi, institutions don't move money. People do.
People do.
People steal money.
Right.
People misappropriate funds.
Right.
People mismanage their docket. Money is lost not because it disappears into the air. People people.
No, you're
take
pushing
it.
me. I was really avoiding this
People
phrase.
take it,
Anguka
Ramogi.
nayo.
People take it.
Because the thing that was
systems
coming.
are set up very nicely, and I'm going to go back to that whole cliche thing of people come and do benchmarking in Kenya, Rwanda, I don't know who. Even people from Nigeria come and benchmark systems in Kenya. So the systems seem to be set up and running, but the people in these, and I understand what you're saying, that the structure that you find in an organization means that you either go with the flow or you go.
Right.
So is it not that the people then who are perpetuating these things should be the ones that should be gotten rid of?
So let me perhaps the first thing that came to mind when you started talking about people is Anguka nayo. I was really trying to avoid that, but let me first of all paint you a picture of the things that I think are easy wins in terms of structural adjustments. It was a very big mistake in our constitution to say that Treasury is under key and lock of the national government and to disempower both Senate and the CRA, the Commission on Revenue Allocation. I think the first thing we need to do is to have Treasury as a neutral organ, whereby there's representation from both the devolved government and the national government. And that will now ensure that there are more eyes on the national pot than right now. There's only one, and this one now can use that opportunity to manipulate their interests within the public, within the devolved units. The second thing also that I have observed that also needs to change is there's a lot of things that are still withheld at the national government that are actually devolved. Now, I am a champion of devolution, not because it's perfect, but because the amount of money that is being stolen at the county government is very small compared to the amount of money that is being stolen at the national government. And this is purely on account of the fact that the money going to the national government is a lot smaller. You can
the money going to the
county government is a lot smaller. And so if it is, for example, going at 5 billion shillings is going to, say, Wajir. Now, you cannot afford to steal, for example, 5 billion shillings going to Wajir. All of it. But at the national government, you have lump sum, huge amounts of money, like the Ministry of Roads receiving 192 billion. I mean, stealing 5 billion, no, stealing 50 billion from 192 billion is a lot easier. And so we have county roads that need to be given to county governments that are still under the rule, the key and lock of Kura, the key and lock of Kera. All these are, of course, unconstitutional organs that are controlling money and just trying to centralize corruption.
All of these bodies are unconstitutional.
They are unconstitutional.
But they've been given the mandate to do certain things when it comes to road maintenance.
They are unconstitutional because those roads are supposed to be devolved roads. When we devolve a unit called a road, you do not come back and say, okay, you guys can tell us what you want done, and then us guys will, no, and build it for you, maintain it for you. No. A devolved unit means that the devolved government will have mandate to determine which road and to determine when and to determine how it's going to be made and to implement, because an executive implements, and to implement its construction and to maintain and to report. You cannot then expect a devolved unit, which is expected by law to report on this road. How do they report on a road that they did not build, they did not maintain, they don't know anything about?
Every time I hear this conversation, I'm actually amazed at one thing. These problems we discussed did not begin with the Ruto government.
No.
Everything we have said, they seem to be culminating now. It's like they've reached boiling point now. But this matter of devolved units not being supported in the manner a devolved unit should be, meaning the actual ensuring that a devolved unit is precisely that.
Right.
Take health. I mean, there's no end to the complaints and to what has been said. the bulk of the money for health stays with the national government.
Yes.
So you want to...
And let me tell you, the objective of that centralization of the health money is corruption. The objective of centralization of the roads money is corruption. Any president right now who is keen on eating will make sure that their friend is minister for roads, because that's where the eating happens. It is the untouchable ministry. Roads, this administration brought in the energy angle and health. This is where people want to eat. Corruption is happening in places where the law has devolved resources.
And again, even as we start, how do you peel back? I know you've talked about, so it sounds to me like you're prescribing what a number of other economists have prescribed today. Shut the thing down, put people in rooms, breakout sessions, and say, how are we then going to make sure that this thing is actually working the way in which it's going to be? Remove the people or break down the systems that allows for such things to take place. Because, and again, you know, somebody said last week that the problem that Kenya is dealing with today is not all these good government, it's corruption. If you deal with this money that seems to disappear, then you deal with or impunity.
Thank you.
Say it's not
corruption is a manifestation of impunity.
It's impunity. Because you think you can do something wrong and get away with it because historically you've been able to.
They know you have been getting away with it. They know. And because they know, they perpetrate the crime. I mean, just think about how bizarre it is that you get to a point where you budget for it.
It is budgeted for.
And you are actually plundering government coffers deliberately and in literally broad daylight. And somehow we have even accepted, we say, you know, it isn't that much. What do you mean it isn't that much?
Yeah.
It isn't your money to take. It's money that's intended to serve everybody in this country. And then a few people determine that it is them who are supposed to take it. You see, we cannot accept that small corruption is good. This big corruption began as small. And then the tolerance levels just increased to the point where we seem not to be very bothered when someone says, "Stole 100 million." Even him can't he get serious. I mean, why didn't he just take a B? So that we know he has actually taken. I mean, surely, can't you see there's something wrong with our psyche here? We are actually lauding theft and saying, so long as you steal in small quantities, it's not that bad. What do you mean it's not that bad?
It is bad.
Who's responsible for taking a hammer to this head right now and doing something about it if they really wanted to?
Mwananchi.
How?
The vote. The vote. Mwananchi, and I'm sorry to say this, but I think our democracy has failed because of poverty, and these people know it. And if you ask me, actually, I think we should reduce our taxes because it looks like the amount of taxes we are giving these guys is too much. And so they have to find ways and means of getting it into their private pockets. I believe we could reduce the VAT to 7.5% like Nigeria and still survive. I believe we could reduce payee to 25% like Nigeria and South Africa and still survive. But because I feel we are giving them too much money. But the Mwananchi, on the other hand, is being denied money. And I wish we had time to go into the austerity question. Because we are talking austerity as regards now expenditure side. We are not talking austerity as regards can we start austerity from the tax side? So that then, while the government is talking about having some resources and managing their resources better, I also, as Mwananchi, is left with some resources to manage better. And you do that by at least reducing the tax. Anyway, back to your question. Who is responsible? Mwananchi has to vote more wisely and not allow themselves to eat money that is theirs and then vote because Ndu is very good, because Ndu gave me 1,000 shillings. No, that 1,000 shilling is yours. Eat it if you have to, but vote according to what you believe is right.
So the austerity question then has come in, and that was actually going to be the next one, because the president has actually committed to saying, you know, let's see how we can apply these measures of austerity across board.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
The president is not being sincere.
Why?
The two reasons. One, yes, we brought down the finance bill, but in the same breath, he made sure he signed the appropriations bill into an act. And so he has a budget that was according to his preferences. To try and placate us into thinking that is amending that, he comes up with a supplementary budget. Now, a supplementary budget can only adjust up to 10%. That's the law of supplementary budget. Now, if you have a budget that huge and that has some provisions that we feel are out of place, and you come up with a supplementary budget, it feels like you really do not feel the need for a structural change that made Kenyans go into the streets. Because I feel, for example, the roads ministry getting 192 billion is just too much. Yes, they may have reduced 14 billion out of it, but where is the rest of the money going to? To paint you a picture, Thika Road was built with 32 billion, and that was 12 years ago. And inflation is only mostly on oil and food. And so most of construction materials have not... The price of cement at that time was 600. The price of cement today is 800.
Right.
It hasn't gone that much. And so now, how did we move from building a state-of-the-art post-modern road like Thika Road with 32 billion into needing over 192 billion to do 1,000 kilometers of road? Because they do 1,000 kilometers per annum. And so that is money that could be just, that budget could be slashed.
Thika Road is not 1,000 kilometers.
It is not 1,000 kilometers. But what I'm saying is it's postmodern, 6 lanes.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
And so now, if we are even to say then, okay, 6 lanes of Thika Road gave us this, it was done at 32 billion. Now, 2 lanes of Mombasa to Malindi, or 4 lanes of Mombasa to Malindi, combined with 4 lanes of Kisian to Usenge in my home. Surely, you need 192 billion to do those roads. I think that someone somewhere is joking and is misleading Kenyans. That money can go away so that we apply austerity even in the roads ministry. We need to apply austerity from the top down.
Let me ask this question. This talk of austerity, we are experiencing what you economists call a recession. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, do you starve money? Do you squeeze money in a recession? Or do you do so during a glut, during a period when the country is booming? Should we not be injecting more money into the country now as opposed to removing the little that there is? Because you remove it, we are going to kill it.
And that's why I was like, this conversation in Ghana fiscal. Because I'm feeling like we are discussing someone is giving us the details to fight over, while the real issue is the fiscal question. Because if you did some fiscal easing and you released some more money into the pockets of Kenyans.
And reduce the taxes.
By reducing, that's what we call fiscal easing.
Yes.
Jacom.
When we started this way, we're going to finish this way.
Fiscal easing, people won't understand. That's why I have to get him to say it.
Okay, Jacom, continue.
You reduce the taxes.
Yes.
But also, that now brings you to a point where you can also come back to the monetary side, because we are having a 13% interest rate. That needs to reduce so that you release funds. You cannot talk austerity when you are only talking about government spending and you are not injecting money into the economy. It is dead on arrival.
Precisely. So the country will not revive. We will not survive the recession. If anything, the pain that we are speaking of will get infinitely worse.
But you know what, Ramogi? There are people in government who know this.
No, there are many
are
people in government.
Experts at that level who are aware of these principles and elements that you speak of. Why don't we see this being applied quickly?
Interest. I mean, right now, look, austerity. We have removed the office of the First Lady, the office of Second Lady, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, and then a supplementary budget comes. What's prioritized? The money that was lost from the office of the First Lady has been brought in from to the back door into the presidency, so that now the presidency budget has increased that budget. It tells you priorities. People's priorities are just wrong and off. They don't really care about Mwananchi. And I think that's where the problem is. And that's why we are all in support of the Gen Z protests.
How long should they continue?
The protests, as long as it's necessary.
What would happen at the end of it?
Well, to be honest, I am not sure that I want this government to fall now, because I still don't know where that would lead us. But I still want that pressure, because that pressure has helped us. That pressure has made us to escape Finance Bill 2024, has made the discourse to change drastically. If it was the years in the past, these people who have been nominated by the president would have gone to parliament without the vetting. Now he has to vet them, even though he knows that the vetting will really just get him what he wants. So the discourse has changed. So if we can maintain this pressure until 2027, I will be a very happy Kenyan.
There you go, Ramogi Odhiambo. Thank you for being here this morning. CEO of Elim Capital has helped us to open up some things. Conversations like this must continue. Till the next time, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.